also this technology makes us capable of creating and constructing our own wanted reality. So the condition of postmodernity in the sense that we can create these bubbles or these idyllic realities, but only virtual, only here, only that.
Only virtual, yeah. Disembodied. So
yes, so we can walk around with a lens on where we feel like we're still in control, that we feel like the world is still making sense, but only so by cutting away the majority of the rest of reality. And Zizek would probably say that that's ideology. That has always been the case, that we can only walk around with like an abstraction of reality or of the real. But the risk we are running now is that we are constructing ideologies and lenses of the real that have no reference to the real anymore, like this frictionlessness again.
Yeah. The divine irreference, Baudrillard would say. The divine irreference. So it gives you a semblance of the divine, of the sacred, of transforming, of becoming immortal, whatever. But it's just a substitute, because the real divinity, it's shed loads of friction and suffering and sacrifice. And
it's already whole. So if you use the word assemblance, this is what I like, because assemblance is building up from parts, right?
Right, you're assembling.
Yeah, and that's left hemispherical. The left hemisphere thinks it can construct anything from parts, because it only sees parts. It cannot see the whole.
It's a substitute. It's like it completely passes people by, that it's like all these arguments about how you can create consciousness. And I just had this conversation a couple of days ago with some guy. I'm part of a group. There's a product, like a virtual tutor, in Poland. There's this like entrepreneur guy, and I helped him like with social responsibility and stuff like that, for this product. And there's a guy in the group saying, yeah, we do consciousness. And I said, like, no, you can't assemble consciousness. It's not, we are born in one bit and we grow from one, it's a different order of things.
Yeah.
And people they don't realize it's like, whatever you do, it will be artificial. It will be an imitation. It will not be the real thing. Even if you have perfectly tasting Coca-Cola, fake Coca-Cola product, there will be qualitative difference between that and the real Coca-Cola. Like, most of people will agree on that.
Yes.
So, and that's the self-deception. Because I think deception, like what you said about how GPT facilitates the hyperreal, and the GPT facilitates, a generation of image, generation of audio and text, and any other information sensor, epistemic tools.
Yeah.
Then this is exponential deception, we can call it, I think.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that deception, that's exponential.
Yes.
And that does lead to this complete the self-deception develop. In order to cope within that system which colonizes our experience increasingly, we have to develop this self-deception to be compatible with it.
Yes.
Right? So you have to be untethered from yourself and from your body.
Yes, very good point. Yeah.
From yourself, from your very self. I mean.
Yeah. I'm also getting we could close the paper on that. There's also there might be a positive note in this whole thing.
And we have to do the best options as well. Yeah. Obviously, I'm optimized for catastrophism. So.
Yeah. And I felt this. I came to this realization like a year earlier. Like, the hyperreal is the best, or this acceleration of the hyperreal is actually the best gift that we've been given, because we are already living under the conditions of the hyperreal. This just brings it very much to the surface. And this, in totality, you need to be able to grasp the totality of the thing, because that creates so much friction if you're connected to the heart, that you cannot but otherwise go back towards that other form of cognition, to start looking for truth. So
Yes.
it's a
It's a
massive,
catalyst. It's
yes,
a catalyzing process. It's a,
yes,
otherwise we wouldn't have evolutionary need,
yeah,
a cognitive demand
yeah,
wouldn't be made on
yes,
our cognition to
yes.
actually address it.
And I don't think that this is wishy-washy optimism, to put it in this way, but I think this is the way to end a pretty doom and gloomy story, to say like, okay, this is also a way of interpreting it. But the nice thing about seeing it like this demands that we educate ourselves on subjects like this, that we write papers like this, that we do these physical embodiments, all these kind of things. So it doesn't excuse us. So it's not a wishy-washy, a wishful thinking. It is actually a call of, okay, and then you do the work. But you need to be able to perceive that this big movement is going on. It's like a rocket is lifting off. We already built the Tower of Babel. We were up high, and with this technology, we've created golem constructors to build the tower even higher. But then have the wisdom to decide, you know what? I'm not going higher. Let this tower build itself, and I have no clue where it's going. Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually going back to evolution of cognition. Each time, like we learned from Vervaeke's the meaning crisis. So, like you said, the axial age, there was literacy, and then alphabetic literacy, especially, which made, and there was a demand made on cognition to expand. I mean, before that, it was demand because scarcity of resources, people had to really struggle to get by, and that's how written language and finally alphabetic literacy got evolved, so that the life could thrive again through the development of societies. Yeah, and then we had Greece with democracy, and now look, and each time there's a collapse, like collapse of Bronze Empire, Bronze Age was loss of literacy. Now it seems, like you say, there's another time we have collapse of literacy because it's being taken over by technologies which render it irrelevant, or render our modes of literacy are irrelevant.
Very good point. We need to, sorry,
Yeah.
we need to really go into etymology. We really need
etymology, great.
We really need to write down literacy. What is this word? What is the root? Because literacy means that we are capable of operating with language, right? That we are able to interpret language. So it's not that we command language, it is that we are able to decipher language. And language is a living thing.
Right, it's a living thing. That's Wittgenstein. And this is exactly when we speak, because language mediates relatedness. So if you can, what we see a lot today is the inverted communication. So you have, I want this reaction, I will use these words and these narratives to get people do what I want. And this is what GPT, that's the psychopathic kind of drive. And ChatGPT will do it like exponentially well.
Yes, and that's algorithmic conditioning, right? Because
that's algorithmic conditioning, yeah.
Because an algorithm also is focused on a goal. It's goal-oriented communication.
Okay, so that's instrumental rationality, which wisdom is transcending.
Nice. Now we're tying them. Very good. And the loss of literacy is literally, in this case, it's literally we created a space for language to exist outside of us. The internet. It's a web that has language in it. So the live organism that used to grow within us, or that grows within us, has an alternative ecosystem based on silicon and on energy, or on electrons, the World Wide Web. And because this frictionlessness, it can just rapidly evolve in a space where it isn't embodied. So the left hemisphere is already not embodied, and having a interior just monologue of symbols and signs, then you get ideology development. So idealism, like, okay, I'm constructing the thing that I want to manifest in the real. It doesn't have to have physical contact yet. And now we've created not only a place where these thought organisms can live outside of the physical real, we've created a whole network where the rules for these organisms are even different. So if you create different niches, organisms will adapt. If you have organisms like language that don't need that aren't limited, and I'm using limited in a very let's say a very wide way, that aren't limited to our neurochemistry or our way we are wired, even though the brain is hyper complex. It's the speed at which these AI and these algorithms and in which the information age or the internet allows transfer of information and allows communication between thought organisms, between language, allows them to rapidly evolve to become these hyper specialized virulent words, let's say. So we're casting spells. So if we're using either organisms or spells, but we're creating super invasive species. Because if they then return to our ecosystem, then they are coming from an alien environment, which is hyper competitive because of these algorithms as well.
Yes. So now, and this, what I came to kind of how I think concisely formulated that, what you just said, in terms of so we are instrumentally, it's instrumental rationality of AI algorithmic processing. Yeah, that's so that which is superior. So there's this asymmetrical disadvantage in this sense, but at the same time, because of that, it precludes the possibility of wisdom because it's not embodied, and wisdom is to do with experience, relationship to self and others, and storytelling, and all of that embodied contextual, transcontextual stuff.
Yes.
So what was it? So where was I?
I think a bit higher.
So yeah, so our cognition does the algorithm, we can do maths and stuff, obviously, but then we also have the existential rationality, which is related to morals as well, to ethics. That's interpersonal conduct and making things coherent in society, and language being the interface binding so that there is trust, loyalty, collaboration, coordination, etc. And then we build civilization. And then when we untether it in the way you've just described, then we basically undermine it, becomes anti-wisdom. It's because it becomes merely instrumental. This rationality is merely instrumental because, like you said, means to ends, goal-oriented, input-output, sequential is algorithmic.
Yes, and it's left hemisphere.
And it's left hemisphere, yeah. And left hemisphere cannot. It's insufficient for wisdom. Obviously, it can only do as analytic stuff and abstract and disembodied and lifeless. So then, when we drive it home to Bostrom's this article, Bostrom's article, from 2012, and in his book as well, in Superintendent, it says, like, because it's obviously this frictionlessness is so tempting because you can get shit easily done, and it's just way cheaper and easier to build these things like this without coding in human values into any design, which is what we want if we want it to not pose any risks.